Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Peace and love. I'm Brother Ali. This is the Travelers Podcast. Thank you for being here. We got a really overwhelmingly positive response to last week's episode with my man Slug from Atmosphere. This is his third time being on the podcast, and I mean, he's just always so gracious and generous with himself and his wisdom and his insights. And it's always a really great conversation. This time we were talking because of the fact that they have this incredible new album that they just dropped called So Many Other Realities Exist Simultaneously. I pieced together the other day, it finally came out on Friday. And I was looking at the title on Spotify and I'm like, man, is this an acronym? And so I looked at it, and it may in fact be an acronym that spells out s'mores. And like knowing Slug, it could be an acronym, and he could have known that the whole time. I don't know. I didn't get a chance to ask him because I didn't put it together. But that was a very, very dope episode. The album is out. Make sure to go to atmospheresucks.com, check out the album. You can stream it everywhere, run those numbers up, and just enjoy a super dope, inspirational new Atmosphere album. Really, really great. And we also talked a lot last week, and I want to also really emphasize this week, that our caravan, which is our subscribers, the people that are really supportive, the community of people that have come together around the music and the message and the movement that we've been building for the last 20 years. We just this week passed the 20-year anniversary of my first album, Shadows on the Sun. And this is a community that we've been building around the message, the music, the movement, and we're continuing that, into these next decades of life. Hopefully the next 20, 30, 40, 50. I have no plans on stopping sharing what I've been inspired and taught and the things that occur to me and that my personal exploration. I have no plans on, ceasing to share those things because I just see the deep connection that's able to be formed and fostered and nurtured and grown between me and the people that listen, between me and the family and friends that I make this music with, that I do this exploration with, whether it's in the world of art or in the spiritual practice, all of these things, these beautiful connections that are made. I think they're the balm and the healing for our society and for our world. And I'm very, very grateful to be able to do it. And so if you go to brotherali.com, it'll prompt you to sign the mailing list, and I ask you to do that. I write those emails myself, and I understand not wanting to give people your email address, but trust me, I think you'll be okay with what I send you. And then also go to the section called Join because we've got the caravan there. And just at the basic $5 level, talking about $5 a month, we've got all of this exclusive and rare and hard to find content there. So there are musical projects that are hard to find or haven't been released. There's videos there that haven't come out. There's speeches, lectures, and then there's also all kind of bonus content from the podcast episodes. So, Chris Calico was on. There's a whole section where his wife actually jumped on the conversation. And so me and Chris and his wife Crystal had this really beautiful kind of family talk about our careers and our lives and our families and our children and our marriages and our mental health and our spiritual practice and all of that. And, that's not something that's for everybody. Not everything is for everybody. The podcast and the album and all that stuff, I just spilled water. The podcast and the album, not on my equipment though. The podcast, the episodes and my albums, those things are on the streaming services. That's cool for everybody. But then there are the people that really are locked in and engaged. And there's certain things that are just for us. Also, if you have been hearing the new Atmosphere album, Slug actually walks through in a really unprecedented, rare kind of exclusive way, the kind of narrative arc of this new album as though it were a graphic novel. You know what I'm saying? Which is something that he usually doesn't do. Normally, Slug has this idea of what these albums are and what the story is or what the arc is. And he normally doesn't share them. I get to hear them, and Ant gets to hear him, and the people that are around him, plain old Bill, the DJ, he gets to hear that stuff. But normally he wants to leave the meanings open for things so that people can hear whatever they want, and people maybe even construct and project their own narrative. And the type of artist that Slug is, he's actually very happy for people to do that. In this one, he went in depth with us and he talked about that particular aspect of the album. So that's something that I feel like that's for people that are really tuned in. That's for people that are really part of this community and journey. It's not something we wanted to put in the episode. So go to brotherali.com, check that out. There's all type of exclusive stuff there and more coming. I did an oral history of my demo tape, Rites of Passage, that you can hear there. I talk through the whole story of how that project got made. And I'm thinking that since we just hit the 20-year anniversary of Shadows on the Sun, it might be good to do an oral history of Shadows on the Sun. And I think if I do that, we'll make that something that's just for the caravan. So brotherali.com, go to the section called join that caravan. It's only $5 a month, and you're really supporting what we're doing here. We're brought to you every week by the Zakat Foundation, zakat.org, or Zakat US on social media. This is an incredible organization that does humanitarian work all over the world. And I do this podcast from Istanbul, Turkey. Turkey was just rocked by historic, catastrophic level earthquakes. And Zakat Foundation is actually on the ground in Turkey, the same way they are in a lot of really key and important places around the world. And they were already set up to respond. And so Zakat Foundation was responding immediately. So if you've been listening to the podcast, if you've been donating something to Zakat Foundation, you are already helping. There were people that were receiving resources and goods and assistance the moment that those things happened because of you supporting them already. So go to zakat.org and check that out. And they've been sponsoring this podcast from the beginning. This week on the podcast, I'm really fortunate, blessed, excited to welcome an MC, an educator, a singer, a writer, a poet, just an incredible human being named Mystic. Mystic is from the Bay Area. She toured with Digital Underground. And Shock G, the late great Shock G, aka Humpty Hump, and 100 other names that he went by. Shock G was really the mastermind behind Digital Underground and so much of what happened in the Bay Area hip hop scene and art scene and music scene. You know, Shock G was the mentor of Tupac. Shock G was also the mentor and the big brother and the friend of Mystic. And he really encouraged her in her career. And earlier in her career, she dropped just a certified hip hop classic, an album called Cuts for Luck and Scars for Freedom that featured a classic song called The Life. That album sat at a really, really important, instructive, and influential time for me. It sat right next to Most Def, Black on Both Sides, and Reflection Eternal. You know what I'm saying? Quali and High Tech, their album, Train of Thought. Those are some of the albums that really were very, very influential and inspirational to me, along with Common and The Roots. There's like a certain group of artists that I really wanted to be part of, um, because of the fact that the type of music that they were making, the sound and the feel, but also what they were able to express. And Mystic, very specifically, she talks in that first album, and we're going to talk in this conversation. She speaks very openly on her own terms about sexual violence and about her relationship with her father and her, the way that she was grown and raised and bred and taught and trained and nurtured and tested and fought. Mystic is a person that is a really deeply beautiful soul, somebody that her vibe is really warm and welcoming and healing and wise, but she's also been through hell. And a lot of times, some of the most beautiful, nourishing, nurturing people are like that, where you might think like, oh, this person must have just been loved and supported their whole lives, and they were, but they've also been to the brink of they've just gone through nightmares. You know what I'm saying? And so Mystic released this really important music. I mean, she worked with all kinds of, huge artists on that album and also remixes and things like that. And she had an amazing career. And in the Bay Area, it's possible to be a celebrity in the Bay. Like they call it town famous, where like in that community, and to a certain degree around the world and in hip hop in general. But she's seen as somebody who is one of the stars and one of the celebrities and one of the just kind of collective treasures that exists and live in the Bay. And she chose, in the height of all of that, to step away from it so that she could pursue teaching and educating and healing and nurturing youth. So she went and got a degree from Berkeley, and then she went to Oxford and got her master's degree in education. And Mystic is one of the people that I've looked up to as a hero, as an inspiration, and I'm just blessed to be able to be friends with and to really feel like a family bond with her. And these are the kind of conversations that I love to share. It's been several weeks since we recorded this one, so I'm excited to hear it too. But we're in for a treat. Like, prepare to really be educated, elevated, inspired, healed, and all of the stuff that we love about being co travelers. Enjoy this episode of the Travelers Podcast. I've had multiple people on the podcast so far from DC.
Yeah.
I've had multiple people, obviously, from Minneapolis. I've had a few different people from Mississippi, like Mississippi keeps coming up. I've had a few Texas, but you're the first person from the Bay that I've had on.
Hey.
And the Bay is one of my homes away from home. Like,
Yeah.
it's a really important place to me as a person, and it's in some ways connected to us being in Istanbul now. But it
Oh,
really makes a
wow.
lot of sense that you are the first person that we talk to from the Bay, because you're one of the really, I think, most universally loved, respected people in the Bay from the different communities that I've been part of. You're somebody that is important beyond words and really universally loved. I've never come across a person in the Bay that doesn't know you in some kind of way, has benefited from you in some kind of way. In the activist world, in the organizing world, in the music space, the Muslims that I know, everybody that I know is like, it feels like consensus that you're well loved. So it's really dope actually that you're the first person from the Bay that's on the show.
Thank you. Thank you so, so much. I have received so much grace and love from all of those um, communities. And with you in particular, I remember like Mark Gonzalez, like,
Mm,
upping me on you. And I've always thought my first publicist and first manager is a Muslim, Tambisa M. Shaka. And so for me to be embraced within that community and learn within that community has always been really amazing to me, and informs partially who I am as a woman and my beliefs, even though I'm not a Muslim.
yeah. Yeah, there's certain people that like, how some communities just claim folks as like, this is an unofficial, like everybody thinks Talib Kweli is Muslim and he's not. He has a Muslim name,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
Talib Kweli is not Muslim, but it's like, but he's ours. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, it's
same
beautiful to
for,
move about the world that way, right? Also, aesthetically, the way that I look, people are like, yeah, she's ours. And I'm like, yeah, I have no racial, ethnic, cultural, like, lines of continuity with you
yeah.
and your peoples and your place, but I love you. And I'd love to be connected to and embraced by you and your peoples and cultures.
Have you been like, so do you get that like, because I'm saying for anybody that comes from the culture we come from, anybody, we would
Yeah,
look at you and know exactly what's going on. Like, her
yeah,
mom's probably
yeah,
white, her dad's probably black.
yeah,
You know what I'm
yeah,
saying?
yeah,
She
yeah,
probably
yeah.
grew up in the hood. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I wouldn't. We can dive into that, but I think part of what makes me who I am is that I also grew up in places that were so outside of the hood that I
Yeah,
always knew that there was something else,
yeah.
and there were incredible powers in the world. I don't know if you want me to dive into that, but like, it's a really important part of who I am.
But do you ever get confused with being Moroccan and Jewish
Oh
and
yes,
Latina? And yeah, I was
Oh
thinking that's
yes, yes.
probably
When I'm on the East Coast, hey mommy, and
you're
also
Puerto
like
Rican.
when I was yeah, when I was studying in South Africa until I opened my mouth, and depending on what I had on, people thought I was colored, and then treated me differently in a more beneficial manner than Black South Africans who I was with when I was studying England, people also could not quite figure out. And just moving throughout the Bay Area and different places, but at the same time, people are usually like, "Oh, she's black," right? Like I'm not somebody as and my mother is white. My father was black and Native American, and I'm somebody who identifies as a black woman, and I'm not like a human where people have been like, "I wonder what she is," and she's trying to pass, or and I've never encountered the kind of issues as a human or as an artist where people are like, I don't understand why she would identify as a black woman. Part of what my mother knew, and my mother was disowned for having me with a black man. My mother was born in St. Louis but raised in Virginia, in what I call the southern part of Virginia.
Hmm.
Her mother wanted to be part of the like women of the Confederacy, and that tells you kind of what you need to know about that to get the insight. And so my mother was very aware that I was this beautiful brown baby in a world that would always know whatever I was not white.
Yeah, that's it.
And that's how she raised me in a global community. So I'm like, whatever people think that I am, they never think that I'm white.
Yeah.
I don't have, although I have privilege, right, with lighter skin. Um, I am not a white woman, and I cannot pass for one, and I would not want to.
So your parents met in a hippie commune in Lower Lake, which is like it's Northern California, but it's not the Bay Area.
Yeah, no, they didn't
And
meet there. She met
oh,
him I think, in Berkeley.
aha, okay,
I was conceived in Berkeley, but I was born on that hippie commune.
okay, amazing.
He played banjo. Yeah, my dad was from Rhode Island. They're both very young. My mother comes out from Virginia. She was helping Black students run for student office when she was in high school and at William and Mary. And so she never particularly fit in with her family in the way that she moved. And she came out here and she said the sun was shining.
Mm.
And she decided this is where she's supposed to be. And she met my father. My mom at that time, I think she was interested in playing the banjo, or she played, what have you. So they ended up in these similar circles. And here I am.
So when your first album came out
Yeah.
in 2001, I mean that was a major moment for me as a
Mm,
lover of hip hop, but also somebody that was like really getting serious about writing songs. And there was so much about it, and it played right alongside Reflection Eternal and Yasin Bey and The Roots, and like I really felt like it was part of that kind of movement of music.
yeah.
And but I would say that your specifically Fatherless Child was you were very early in opening up and talking about your personal story, um, in ways that weren't really. I don't think hip hop had really developed to that point yet, to be that specific
Mm,
about your narrative and your autobiography and opening up in that way, which obviously became a big part of my own work. And so it was
mm.
really inspirational. So you were really inspirational to
Oh,
me in that
thank you.
particular way. And so in that song is really where I had a sense of who you are even
Yeah.
before I met you. And so in the song you say that your parents split when you were 3, I think.
Yeah.
And so you ended up moving around and living in different places? Like, so did you live in
Yeah.
Hawaii?
Yeah. Yes, we did. So my mom left. My father was an addict, right, which is discussed in that song. My father
Mhm.
um, passed from a heroin overdose. Um, and my but obviously before that, my mother left because she felt it wasn't a healthy environment and a healthy person to raise a child with, as him being an alcoholic, and there were other women. Like, it really is in the story of the song. That is not a creative thinking song of let me create a life that didn't exist. It is my story. And my mom, as I mentioned, had been at William and Mary, and but she had dropped out of school when she came to California. So we went to Hawaii. My first babysitters were pot farmers. She worked at this little restaurant dealing with uh, luau pork pigs, and she wanted me to be vegan. I wasn't raised eating pork, but she says her skin was never so soft, and she kind of did her thing, and I ran around in these big open fields. And she went back to UC Santa Cruz, I want to say around the time, or applied to UC Santa Cruz and went to UC Santa Cruz. I want to say around the time that I was 5. Or yeah, I remember going to the preschool and the daycare there, but also when she was there, she studied abroad at the University of Guadalajara. And so we lived there in Guadalajara for 6 months as well. And my mother had me when she was 21, 22. She moved about the world. So my only memory of Hawaii really is like her yelling at me to be careful of the waves. And my memories of Mexico are of we were staying with like this wealthier family, and I spent all or a lot of my time. I went to school there, but I spent my other time in the kitchen with the senora who did all of the cooking for the family, and she was just so loving and caring. And so I remember that. So yeah, we kind of moved around, and after UC Santa Cruz, and my mom wrote her thesis on like black farmers, right, and the inequalities with black farmers. And at the time, she was told that was not a valid area in which to create a thesis. This was not an important
Amazing.
area of study. And I still have her thesis. It's like, it's paper. It's in a blue folder. And from there we moved to the Central Valley, and my mom was a farm worker organizer, um, and was able to use the Spanish that she had learned and her research to really come into a community when those fields in Central California, which for anybody who's listening who's not kind of familiar with the layout of California, there's like the Bay Area up north, and this, the Bay Area is up north, and Southern California, Los Angeles. These are very particular kind of places, and the Central Valley in between is full of now of mass agriculture. There's very few smaller farmers who are there. But at that time in the 80s, they were still spraying the fields with chemicals while the women who are farm workers were working. And this was impacting the development of the babies, of the fetus, and impacting how those children were born into the world. And so she organized um, with them. So I started spending time on an organic farming collective that was over, I think like 300 acres. And I got to run around free. We used outhouses. Our water came from the stream. Our power was from solar energy. My first job was out in these fields. I learned to read the stars. I learned how to know when it was going to rain. I learned and so I continue to have access to this space up into maybe around 13, which is where I start to begin to experience trauma. Um, but so yeah, 1 foot in urban and hood, and well, that would be 3 feet. 1 foot in another part of other parts of the world, and 1 foot in what ends up being these very urban places. And we moved from Visalia to San Francisco.
So I moved around into different cities as I was growing up, and I never really stayed in one place for more than a year or so. And I didn't move. I'm so like associated with Minneapolis because that's where I became an individual, and that's where there's
Yeah.
people that have known me for different phases of my life. Like there's a elder woman in Minneapolis named Arlene Elamine who has hired and fired me from jobs. She has looked around the room for stuff to hit me with. Uh, you know what I'm saying? She came to my shows and
Yeah.
cussed me out for cussing so much. Um,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? She's seen both of my marriages and all my
Yeah.
kids and all this stuff. So like I didn't move to North Minneapolis till I was 14, turning 15, but that's where I became me. So that's where I associate that place as home. When did the Bay become your home?
Well, I mean, the Bay, like I said, I was conceived in Berkeley. I went to elementary school for the most part in San Francisco. I
Ah,
went
okay.
to sixth and seventh grade in San Francisco. Then, and we can talk about trauma and healing more, but then I experienced trauma in the middle of eighth grade. I moved out to Santa Cruz and lived on the farm full time, which is,
Mhm.
I think, really hard for somebody who's traumatized and turning into a teenager and is probably moving way too fast in the world. Not probably,
Mm,
absolutely
mm,
moving way too fast in the world,
mm,
and at risk. And
mm.
then my mom pulls me from Santa Cruz, which was a blessing, and says, you're not coming back to San Francisco. I'm moving you to Oakland, which this is late 80s, you know, the dope game is in full effect. I am moved
Right,
into the
right.
rolling 20s, right? This is part of
Yeesh.
where what people hear in my music and songs like
Yeah,
D-Boy and
that's
love
where the
songs
Cuddy part comes from.
about D-Boys. That's where that part comes from. And I say I'm from Oakland because like you in Minneapolis, I claimed myself here. I claimed
Mhm,
myself as an activist. I claimed myself as a black woman, right?
mhm,
To
mhm.
to situate myself in the legacy of the Black Panthers. But it's not a legacy when you live here. This is your friend's parents. These are the parents of the children that I'm working with. By the time
Right.
I'm
It's
17,
not the
I
Eyes
start
on the Prize documentary, it's
no,
real
no,
life.
no, no. It's real. It's and these are the people that people don't know their names as Black
Yeah.
Panthers, right?
Right,
And who
right,
are
right.
still active.
Mhm,
And I start rhyming at 16, but I start working with children at 17. And imagine I end up being able to work with a child whose mother is Erica Huggins, who was once the
mm,
Minister of Education for the Black Panther Party.
mhm.
I don't even know that she remembers me to this day. She's always so graceful. This is part of doing the work, right? You don't do the work so you can count the people who you have worked with. So you can go, oh, I have served this many people. I have benefited. I have transformed. That's not why you do the
Mm,
work. But
mm.
Erica showed me that we could be revolutionary. We didn't have to be like extra hella angry to prove that we wanted to
Mhm.
change things
Right, right,
and that
right, right.
actually education is revolutionary. Working with our children
That's right.
is revolutionary.
That's right.
And she started taking me up to a place called Camp Sweeney in East Oakland. She was working with Harvard and mind body connection. And so I was like, well, this is a trip. I drop out of high school, but I'm getting a check from Harvard to work with young men who are boys really who are in a juvenile prison, um, facilitating around the connections between our minds and our bodies and what we're thinking and how we connect our movements to the futures and safety of our children and our loved ones. And she's taking me to meditation retreats, right? So like in Oakland, it's all these pieces. It's revolution is alive. I love and honor all of us as artists, right? Including you as humans who do the work in our communities, whatever that looks like, and regardless of anybody, if anybody has any knowledge about that. Um, Full stop. Period. Also,
Mhm,
I I I understand that I wish more artists would do that because of how unique the Bay Area I think is and Oakland is that you don't just pick up a microphone, you don't become a master of ceremony without understanding your responsibility and commitment to
that's right.
community.
Yes.
And people go, "Oh, but they're so young and you're so young and you're doing this." And it's like revolutionaries have always been young.
That's
The
right.
people who change the
Yes.
world are always young, and I won't go off on that tangent, but like that's why I firmly believe that we need to support our young people, our collective younger people and children, and say you actually are the leaders. You tell me how I can love you better and I can support you better. And if there is a piece of knowledge or wisdom or love that you need from me, I am here to do that. If I need to stand in front of you to protect you, I will.
Mhm,
If you need me to
mhm.
stand behind you to support you, I will. Beside you to walk with you, I will. But I understand that this is yours. right?
Mm,
And
mhm.
so I think in my life I have fully gotten to live that out and to become that activist.
In your own musical journey,
Yeah.
I know I've read about that I think you're like singing on a movie soundtrack and you were doing MC battles, and I know that like early on, like the eclectic influences that you have and reach that you have was there, but at some
Yeah,
point,
but I was not a singer.
uh-huh.
That's the part that I always try to clarify is I never had any interest in singing whatsoever. I
Uh,
might have sang at talent shows. I was a straight MC. I was a rapper. We weren't even really calling ourselves MCs
mm,
at that point. Um, I mean, people were in music, but we were just rappers, right? We weren't talking about the entirety of hip hop culture and the language that we use now to talk about our culture and our history. But I was a straight up rapper,
mm,
and I met a woman by the name of the Angel, who is an artist and is a producer. She was signed to Delicious Vinyl at the time, and
mhm,
she was looking for ways to bring me in. Like she thought I was a poet before I was an MC, and so she brought me in to finally to do. I think it was okay, all right. And we did this, or maybe she first brought me in to do a remix of Donald Byrd Kofi, and it was a spoken word piece, gliding gently on Sundays, gliding. Remember, and on this and in okay, all right, she gets me to harmonize. She's like put this melody in there and she plays with me a little bit on it, and this kind of opens up a space because I'm like hardcore, right? Don't be commercial. This is underground. This is we spit.
mhm.
And then here comes Shock G, and I'm kind of jumping ahead in the story, but Shock G and I'm already connected with Money B and Clee, and we're moving in these circles and musical conferences that are happening. And when we were celebrating the 20th anniversary of Cuts for Luck and Scars for Freedom, when I brought on producers and these folks and asked, "Do you remember where we met?" A lot of them said, "I walked up on a cipher and you were in it." And it was interesting to hear that's what most people said. But Shock G, Cat Tyranny, who was also part of Digital Underground, said Shock wants to he wants to talk to you. And so I go over to Shock's house on the other side of Lake Merritt, and we stay up all night, um, rhyming and singing back and forth. And he's playing piano, and we fall asleep on the floor. And then he takes me into the studio to cover Gloomy Sunday by Billie Holiday. This is the first time I'm ever singing a whole song, and I don't know why he thought I could do that. And that was for a film, and so Shock opens up this world to me. And also, I'm being brought in Digital Underground to become a member. This in this place in our crew, there are no boundaries. You are not bound by what you think rap is or what you think hip hop is. It's about music. And I never
Mm.
met a more singing, rapping crew than my crew. But so Shock opens this up for me, and I'm out touring with Digital Underground. This is in the 90s, right? I'm the DU goddess. I'm the only female in the crew. But Shock is not trying to change me. He's just trying to say, look, you can be anybody who you want to be. And also you don't have to be so broken. Be the lover that you are. Be the light that you are. And I always say he picked me up when I was a broken black girl, and he surrounded me with love and laughter and family and helped to start that healing motion. But yeah, I come back because I'm making my first album, and yeah, there are people who never knew until they heard that album that I was doing singing stuff. The funny thing about the life, right? And the fact that that was this huge record is that is the first um, complete singing song that I ever wrote
Crazy.
and recorded.
Amazing.
I first wrote the life and A plus from Souls. I told him, I said, I wrote it, but I'm singing on it. And he looked at me like I was crazy, right? And we go in to start recording these songs for this album, and Adam's like, well, I can't tell you where the harmony note is, and I don't know, right? I'm working with all these dope hip hop producers, and I'm still fiercely like I'm an MC. Don't ever get
Right.
it twisted.
Right.
Um, but I'm also discovering some things just feel better when they're sung. Sometimes it needs
Mhm.
to be, right? Even take a song like Fatherless Child, in singing on that chorus, I'm a fatherless child. It's all I've ever been, right? Singing that, crying at the same time, recording it is cleansing. Creating art is sacred. And so I started to pick these pieces and singing the way that our voices vibrate within our bodies. When
Mhm.
you talk to me and you place your hands and you feel where that vibration comes from, we can start to understand how this radiates through the body. The first album, the way that we mixed it in the studio, there was something that was called a bass corner. I would stand in it and I wanted all of the music to rise up through the body, right? And up and out, because there was music being made and there's still being music being made that hits in the lower kind of part closer to your abdomen and sinks down into the floor.
Yeah,
And
through
so
your
the
butt.
frequency, right? Through your butt and down, and
Through your
literally,
hips and
like,
through your yeah.
right, we need to be connected to Mother Earth, right?
That's
And
right,
we
that's
need
right.
to
Yeah.
stand, but there is music that draws down the
Yes.
energy of ourselves and our frequencies. But so singing, I gravitated in making that album and then continuing forward to where we are now.
Mhm.
I think embracing being a singer was part of my, not only my artistic, but my physical healing place.
Mm.
And with the life, that record just feels good to this
Yeah,
day, right?
that's right. Yeah.
But for the people who really listened to what I was saying, it was this radical thing to be on the radio talking about, politicians and folks who are incarcerated and mothers raising babies and not wanting Glocks to be out and you don't have to sell your dope today.
Right, that's right.
But a lot of people didn't listen to it. They just felt it. And
It's just
so
dope.
that's
This
a
is a
long
dope
answer
song.
about singing, but here's the thing is, yeah, I never wanted to do that.
Mm.
And now people go, well, you were singing more here or you're this, and I'm like, yeah, why would I limit the tools in not just my artist box, but my healing box and my life box? If it is to do spoken word or it's rhyming or it's singing, I'm thankful to the angel and to Shock, um, for offering me the gift of singing.
Shout out to my brother BK1, who is the producer of this podcast. He's my partner in Travelers Media, and he was my first DJ. And he was the first person to record me. He was the first person to really encourage me, along this journey. And he's actually going to come on the podcast. We're going to have an episode with him where you'll get to hear about his own story and his own journey and just hear from him and what he's about. It's really dope. But it's been very important to both of us from the beginning of this journey that we're independent in the music and now in podcasting and the things that we offer the world as Travelers Media, because of the fact that the music industry and the big media conglomerates whether it's the streaming services and platforms, whether it's the big radio networks, the TV networks, and unfortunately, even social media and YouTube. These are all big corporate entities that have a certain approach, they have a certain orientation. And their idea is that it's quantity over everything. They believe that their power is generated from the fact that they do whatever is possible to get attention and just to get tonnage of human time and interest and views and shares and likes on on any one particular thing, and that's what they value. And quality doesn't matter at all. The message doesn't matter at all. As a matter of fact, what they've seen over their years of taking that approach is that the more negative something is, the more salacious something is, the more juicy something is, the more controversial the content is and the message is, that causes people to argue with each other. It taps into the lowest common denominator of human beings, so that it really is uniting people around their jealousy and their biases and the things that their anger, their desire to outstrip each other and to defeat each other. It taps into that type of energy, and it rewards that stuff when you get on streaming services, when you get on social media platforms. If you're gossiping, if you're giving people something to argue about, that's the stuff that they really reward, and they spread it far and wide because they know that people will. There's this primal kind of animal instinct that'll kick in people and make them start to engage. And then they sell that engagement to people who want to sell you stuff. They sell that advertising space to people that come in and want to sell you on a lifestyle and sell you goods and services and products and all this kind of stuff. That's a certain approach. And me and BK1, it's like, okay, that's the way that a lot of people understand what music is supposed to be. That's not the way that we see it. And also these conversations, this stuff is based on quality first, on virtue first, on engaging and connecting with human beings based on what's most beautiful about us. We're going to keep it real. We're going to be funky, and that's part of connecting. We've got to be real about the human condition. We got to be real about what we're going through and what we're struggling with and all of our own contradictions and all of that. But that's very different than just selling people some sort of glamorized gossip and everything that goes along with it. Like, we're really trying to connect based on the most important and universal truths and based on what's best and strongest in all of us. We're trying to curate and identify and invest in connecting and bonding with people on what's most beautiful and what's most hopeful, because we believe that that's what's most healing for us, for the people that we're in community with, for culture, and really that's the hope for humanity. That's the hope for the world. So that's what we're doing over here. Now, I say all that to say that we're grateful for the sponsors that we've been able to work with. You know what I'm saying? We've been able to work with sponsors that we really care about. I care about Zakat Foundation. I care about BetterHelp, online therapy platform. If you go to betterhelp.com/travelers, you'll be able to connect with this network of trained, licensed therapists. And you'll be able to connect with, mental health, with therapy. I live outside of America and I'm self-employed. I don't have insurance. So that's how I do my therapy. And I'm so grateful to have partnerships with them. And then we've had other partners too. And all of them are people that I know, that I love, that I trust. I use their services. Their products are part of my life. Shout to Osman the tailor, at Vice Gerent. Shout to my people at Udamentary. Shout to Roots Birthing Center. You know what I'm saying? Black women owned birthing center in North Minneapolis. These are all services and products that I love. I'm so happy to be working with them. But even with all of that being true, there's this thing where when you have a sponsor who's paying just to get on your platform, you start wanting to deliver numbers to them. You want to show them how their advertising dollar is stretching, and that's the way that you start thinking about it. And me and Brendan know, me and BK know, there are certain guests that are going to cause a spike in the numbers. Like the numbers are going to go up when Slug's on. The numbers are going to go up when Immortal Techniques is on. And also, those are people that we're very happy to have on the show. But it's like, they all have to be famous? Does every conversation have to translate to a spike in numbers? Because if it does, then are we really independent? Are we really free? Are we really offering the stuff that we value the most? This conversation with Mystic is one of my favorite ones I've ever had on the podcast. And because of the fact that at her height and at her prime, she searched her soul and said, what I really want to be doing is be in the classroom and teaching youth. And in order to do that, I want to really go and get the accreditation that this system offers so that I can go in any school and be in any environment and prove to anybody that I have the right to be there. So she took the time and got off of the mic, stopped promoting herself in this way. You know what I'm saying? And of course she came back full circle with the new album that she has. You know what I'm saying? This really beautiful project, and we're going to talk about that later as we go on in this episode. But what we really want is to search ourselves and our community and really be thinking about quality first, be thinking about message and culture and movement and healing and wholeness, things that are not popular, things that don't have a product that you can buy along with them, and to be able to place the highest value on that stuff and then offer that to you. So what we want to do is to focus and engage directly with you. So what I'm asking and what I'm trying to do is to get to 1,000 subscribers. We realize that no matter who's on the podcast, there's 2 to 3,000 people that listen every single week, no matter what. And so what we're trying to do is lock in 1,000 people as a start at that $5 level, because that will provide for our needs to be met in terms of our basic overhead for doing the podcast. A podcast episode, every single episode is bare minimum 20 hours a week of work for me and BK. And it's just the two of us doing it. So it's a minimum of 20 hours a week. In order to take that time away from other stuff, we have to also be able to justify that, taking that time away from, things that feed our families. So we've got to be able to say, okay, there's going to be at least a base level there of support and of resources. If we can get to the point where we've got all 3,000 people that listen every single week, if every single one of you all were to subscribe at that $5 level, you get all of this special content that's just for the people that are tuned in. You know what I'm saying? It's not just we're going to put some stuff behind a paywall to get you. This is a decades long relationship that we're building. And if you've been with us, then you know that. You know that you came to shows in 2002 and I'm standing there looking at you, hugging you. You know what I'm saying? You're giving me your cough and then I'm giving, you know what I'm saying? All of this stuff. You know that I was there the day that you proposed to your partner. And then now you got kids and you guys came to shows for years before that. And I remember you and I see you in the audience and we talked to each other and we got pictures of each other and I signed your ticket and then you do the VIP thing and all of this stuff that we've been building for all these years. We want to continue to build that. And we don't have to necessarily go to concerts all the time. We don't necessarily have to sell you t-shirts all the time. It's like, let's all of us just really invest in this music, message, movement, community, connection. That's what we're doing. So that's what the caravan is about. Go to brotherali.com, sign the mailing list, and go to the join section and get down with that $5 level of the caravan so that we can keep building this thing together. Back to the episode. I know that on Cuts for Luck, like the life is the hit
Yeah.
for outwardly in the world. And I'm saying, and I mean that's it's a classic joint. Like you
Thank you.
throw it on, like I said, next to the Blast by Reflection Eternal, or the in that genre or in that specific part of the culture in that time.
Yeah.
But really for me, Fatherless Child is the one. Like that's the gem. A lot of times you have the
And
one
I
that
had no
goes,
idea
mm,
that that was going to connect with people like you. Like I had this idea that we are, and I'm sorry I interrupted you.
no,
Um,
please.
that we I had this idea that we are more connected than we think we are, that we are
Mm.
more alike than we think we are. Knowing something and being able to articulate it is different than living through it and internalizing it and becoming part of the way you move in the world, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
when we put that album out, I had this idea and I just thought, I, being vulnerable and sharing all these things, I didn't know any other way to. It's my art. This is music. This is not about making albums. This is not about being famous. This is
Yeah.
not about, this is like my own process and place and trying to figure myself out in my 20s
Yeah.
as somebody who experienced severe trauma, right? I was raped when I was 12 and I
Mhm.
told nobody in the world. And so I carried these things.
Mhm.
And then my father died on the day that my record deal was done, right? And I've only performed that song probably less than 5 times. I remember performing it one time in Chicago at Lady Fest. People really wanted it, and I wasn't sure if I could get through it, but I had never been in a more supportive place than this room full of women and people from this, variety of communities, the LGBTQIA communities.
Mhm.
And the reason I don't perform it is because writing it and recording it, that was my part. That was my healing. That
Mhm.
was my process. And then I
Mhm.
was done.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that you then put it out in the world and like everybody knows all the things. And my mom didn't even know that I had been raped until she heard that song. And so
She learned
that,
about it from the song.
but she didn't, she learned about it before the album dropped, but she learned about it from the song. And like that opened up different conversations. So this is this massive point of beginning to heal and openness as I'm creating this album, but also this deep kind of sorrow and having my friends be killed by the police and and what's happening in our communities and the deaths and the drugs and but also still because we've talked about the beginning of my life and how magical and loving that was. I still believe in love.
Mhm.
I still believe that like there's a way there's a way through this. I'm like we cannot suffer forever. These people cannot, these systems, these people can't do this to us. And so we get out and people literally start sharing their stories of trauma and
Yeah.
healing with me
Yeah.
wherever I go.
Mhm.
They're whispering in my ear with tears running down their cheeks.
Yeah.
They are telling me stories of their entire families being murdered. It's girls that I go in to facilitate with girls as part of a program and they pull me to the side and whisper about how they too are raped. People are sharing about their parents being drug addicts. But as I start that song, I'm saying it's for anybody who knows that kind of that kind of sorrow, right? And in that album, I'm not just talking about the people who die from drugs, but from domestic violence and all these pieces. And I quickly figure out, even though I'm not performing that song during the time very much, that I realize there are so many people suffering in the world.
Mhm.
There are so many people walking with trauma, right?
That's right.
People talk about
Yeah.
walking wounded, that we are walking, but also that we believe in love
Yes,
and that we
ma'am. That's right.
thrive with live and we
Yeah.
thrive in community. And so I
Yes.
realized the power, master of ceremony for me, I get this deeper understanding that it's about collective healing. This is
Yeah.
not
And
just a
ceremony is a
party and a
sacred
show.
ritual. That's right. That's right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so
Yes.
we are healing together.
Mhm.
We are
Yeah.
finding these
That's right.
spaces
That's
together,
it.
going through all these pieces. And so, yeah, I had no idea.
You read the name Fatherless Child, it would sound like, and at that time, the time when people were being vulnerable a little bit, it usually
Yeah,
be because they were expressing either deep anger most of the time and sometimes sadness, but that's really a love letter even to your father.
it is,
It's
right?
a very deeply loving song to say I'll always love you.
Yeah,
And I mean, so for people who haven't heard it yet, I'm imagining people that haven't heard it yet will probably hear this and then go back and listen to it.
yeah,
But
yeah,
so your father is out of your life from the time you're very small, and then you reconnect just a couple years before the
Mhm.
song is written,
Mhm.
and he
Mhm.
comes to your house on Telegraph, and you kick it, and you play music, and you sing.
He comes
He's
from
he
Telegraph. Yeah, he comes to my
oh, he
house on
comes from
Oakland
Telegraph.
Avenue.
Okay, okay,
Yeah, from
okay.
Telegraph and 43rd, and he comes to my house on Oakland Avenue,
So
and
he's
I
living,
call
like,
A
not
plus.
far from
Well, here's the
crazy.
thing. It turns out that when my father comes to me,
Uh-huh,
he is unhoused.
uh,
My father was not, he was a brilliant artist and creative,
mm,
and he didn't, and through his addictions, he kind of hurt everybody who he had been connected to. Um, and he's very anti-system, right? He doesn't want to be bound. What I come to find out, and I'm really happy that I'm like grown and supporting myself, well, grown as you think you are when you're 25 or something, that that he doesn't want a house.
mhm,
He doesn't want to live in places. He doesn't want to be bound by those things. But I call A plus, I call Adam. He comes from across the street, and that's in the song. And my father and I are singing, and I get to ask all these questions. I come to really find out, that I'm indigenous and who my tribes are, and I start to understand his humanity in a way, right? Part of I've not birthed children, but I have 7 godchildren,
mhm,
and I am incredibly blessed by that. And I think that part of the journey of growing from a child to an adult is understanding that your parents are human.
mhm,
Your caretakers are human.
yeah,
We are not these kind of perfect people. We don't live forever. 30 is not really old, right? All these things that we think when we're younger, it's not in those ways. And but I was really blessed to have these 2 years with him to ask these questions and to heal in these ways and start these conversations. And he was clean but not sober for a year. And my mother like went once I found him and was like, "Stay away from my daughter. Stay away from her.
okay, I was
I,
gonna
I
ask
don't
about
want you to
that. Like,
hurt her."
how did she feel about yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
she was like, "No way." And I was like, "Well, no." He's like, I was like, "He's really harmless. Like, he, he's homeless, and he just like, he's not a threat to me that I could see." Um, but he ended up getting clean. He wasn't clean when he came to me, but he got clean. And in many ways, I feel like he actually came to me to die. I was one of the last people left in the world that because we had been separated, I was not so traumatized that I would refuse to open the door,
Mhm,
you see.
yeah.
And so, but he tells me he's clean. He tells me all these things. And then as we, I don't, do I say it in the song? I don't know if I say it, but the day he died was the first time he had gotten high again after being clean. And this is
Ah,
important. And anybody who's loved an addict, particularly a heroin addict, will know, and the research shows us,
yeah,
particularly if you have people who use alcohol and do heroin at the same time. But addicts will step back and then come back and try to take the same amount
yeah,
that they had taken
yeah.
before, and their bodies just cannot do it.
Because
And
they don't have
so,
that same level of tolerance anymore. So the dose that used to get them fixed now will kill them.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And yeah, and this happens, and as I say in the song, I was in the kitchen cooking, and I was making candied yams, something so sweet, and I get the page, and I find out that he's dead, and it really impacted um, my life. I went through deep sorrow.
And that was the day that you finalized your
Yeah,
record contract.
the day my deal was done, you died with a
Sorry to
needle
hear
in your
about that.
arm and angels by your side. And I miss you. Tattooed it on my back, and yes, it's really on my back. Fatherless child fades to black. I'm a fatherless child. It's all I've ever known. It's all I've ever been since you've gone from me. However it says, but like it's hard for me. But you know what the really important part that you pulled out is me saying I could never unlove you, love you. I talk about how we are mirrors and reflections
Yes, indeed.
with each other. We mirror each other, but we reflect each other's light and our love. And when I listen to your art, well, you and I are able to be in conversation or to exchange. It is that mirror and reflection, and to know that I come to a place where I am loved, and to be able to love you, and to receive, right, with gratitude, and to give those things um, with each other. So this is it's really special to me, and even to talk about fatherless child and have this song that is about so much pain but is about love be a deep connecting point. And I think that's the thing about that album is people know the life, but they it's like they didn't listen to the rest of the album. They thought that it was one thing, but there are all these stories from a 25-year old uh, broken black girl looking for love and trying to spread love and trying to call out the injustice in the world and trying to build community, and in some ways like trying to almost desperately hold on because life cannot be this. Life cannot be this suffering and this sorrow and this broken, and who do we become? So give thanks that here we are. And I've been thinking about at the moment, like there's so much trauma thrown everywhere in all of the music, right?
Yeah.
And then we have artists who are sharing these beautiful healing stories, right? And journeys from them. But I was thinking
Yeah.
about when I kind of did my reflection this morning that we have to, I think, be really present and aware about what we build on our trauma.
Hmm.
Building on our trauma, as I'll put side by side to that of building through our trauma to healing and moving through, I think we have to
Mhm.
be really careful about holding on to our trauma and capitalizing on our trauma and
Mm.
putting our trauma into a capitalist system, because the system and the people who run the system don't care about our mental health or our racial health or our babies or our
Right.
communities, right?
Right.
But we
Yeah.
have to be careful with that, that we don't get stuck in the trauma,
Yes.
because you could go platinum off your trauma, but
That's
then
right.
what do you do with that? And I
Mhm.
think part of what I figured out in stepping back from the music business, right? And I maybe that's not for everybody, but when I did that in 2004 and went to school and all those things, that it was so beautiful to become like anonymous again and be mandolin and not be mystic and teach the babies and get my knowledge to try to contribute to the world and to just do my healing,
Mhm.
and to do it outside of the public eye.
Mhm.
And I talked about when I got the masters back for that first album, part of what is important is nobody else owns my trauma anymore. So I can put the art out. And the point is to make it accessible to every person who is on a healing journey or hasn't
Mm.
even made it to that point yet.
Mhm.
But yeah, some company doesn't own my trauma anymore. And I would not have had the language to identify
Mm.
that back there with that album.
Mhm.
But what I did know is I started to realize like
Mm.
people will just put you in this box, and they want to talk to you as the girl who was raped. They always want to talk to you like in this
Right.
place.
Right.
And it's like, okay, but what if I'm not that anymore? And I get to claim myself. But that's the beauty of fatherless child, and that you see, that you recognize, that you felt. That song is it's in process. It's in transition. And we are all always in transition. But yeah, watch out who you let, own your trauma. And watch out how you own your trauma.
That's really powerful. Really powerful. And one of the narratives about like the genius of black music and culture that is really common, and I understand it, but this narrative that, like, all of this genius came because of the pain, because of the
Mm,
collective trauma, is just like, that's a lie. You know what I mean? Like, that
yeah,
is not true.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like, that genius is so
yeah,
powerful and strong that it's able to process whatever comes, you know what I mean? And make art out of whatever is coming in the moment. And that art will be healing and it will be genius. But that genius was there long before the interruption of the
absolutely,
slave trade and all of this stuff.
absolutely.
And like the idea that that pain is what actually was the active ingredient that brought it out is like,
Yeah,
no.
yeah. I was told once, I think it was the song that I have with Yassine that
Mm.
Kanye's produced, although it might have been, I think it was Breathe, but I was signed to DreamWorks at the time. And I
Hmm.
literally stood there. Yeah, it's a song with Donnell Jones because I am rapping on that, right?
Hmm. Yes, you are.
And they stood there and they said, "Well, you're not rapping." And I said, "What do you mean?" And they said, "Well, it feels good."
Yeah.
And I said, what are you saying to me? That if we through our art, if we are rhyming and it feels good, it's not hip hop? That you have to figure out a way to market me because you don't know how to market the things that feel good. You
Right.
don't know how to market the things that uplift and change the
Yeah.
world and how we see ourselves. And we do that, but that's important in all our narratives, right? And I'll put on
Hmm.
my little academic nerdy hat for a minute. Is that people talk about like a master narrative, right?
Mm, 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 mhm.
When I was at UC Berkeley and I was in this wonderful anthropologies in Africa's course, before I was going to study in South Africa, that that I made this whole argument. And like this was apparently one of the hardest classes ever that people I knew had taken at Cal and what have you. And I did very well in the class, but I was aghast at this argument that there is a master, like dominant narrative, and that the narrative that we are presenting as scholars and researchers of color and as women or non-binary is that we are this kind of alternative to that. And my thing
Mhm.
is we existed before that narrative. Our
Yes, that's
culture,
right.
our
Yeah, yeah,
narratives were not
yes.
created in response.
No,
That is
that's
not a
right.
master narrative. That is not a dominant narrative. We exist without
Yes,
and before you.
that's right, that's right, that's right. And be and defining oneself in counter and as a contradiction to something else
Yeah.
still centers the thing, still
It
centers the
still
enemy.
centers.
Yo, and when I was in the Bay, I lived with Amir
Yeah.
Suleiman. Amir Suleiman says
Yes, yes.
they claim they hate the devil, but they're just jealous instead. They want the devil's crown.
Mm,
I want the devil's head. They want the devil's throne. I want the devil dead. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
something really important about, and it's one of the things that like we're talking about and we're accessing truths that come before the distinctions of right and left, that become
Yeah.
before this like modern framework of how, and it really is a European framework or a modern like European
Absolutely.
framework. You know what I'm saying? So that so much of this like kind of leftist narrative, not that the right is our friend either, but so much of this
Right.
narrative still really centers somebody else's idea of what it means to be whole, what it means to be human, what it means to be successful,
Yeah.
what it means to
Yeah.
produce art, what it
Yeah.
means to, yeah. So that's
Yeah.
why
So
that
to center
holistic
and to
thing
claim
of,
ourselves. Yeah.
yeah,
That because I am not I talk about it in the context of beautiful resistance, right? Like people talk
mm-hmm,
about these narratives and
mm-hmm,
what they center,
mm-hmm,
and they talk about it as if we began with slavery or we began as they were figuring out from empire how to break up the spaces and
yeah,
name the places
yeah,
geographically and break up and destroy the relationships that existed between peoples.
mm-hmm,
That yeah, no, we don't, our resistance, our beauty, our love, our
yeah,
organizing, our
yeah,
strategies, our power,
yes,
our capacity was
yes,
not created because they did that.
that's right.
we were
That's
we
right.
were we were building we were building the world.
That's
We
right.
were
That's right. That's
building
right.
the science and the
Yes.
math and
Yeah.
the written, well, what we call the written word now, but we were building through word and telling the stories, and the creation and honoring. And we've been sacred.
And what's amazing is that the people who now, you know what I'm saying? I'm an albino person. We like this whole thing about being seen by different ways by different people. So
Yeah,
I'm albino.
yeah,
My parents are white. I was raised in black communities. And the people who understand themselves to be white, that's also an interruption of a very human, holistic
hmm,
history. Even the idea of being European that came before that,
yeah,
even the idea of
yeah,
being German or whatever that came before that, those are interruptions that were placed on people by somebody who saw themselves as being in power. You know what I mean? But there
yeah,
was a very connected and holistic, fully human lived experience. You know what I mean? So now
absolutely,
you have this idea where like
absolutely,
this thing of like, well, you know, this joke that white people have, well, white people don't have rhythm and can't dance. I'm sorry, that wasn't the reality 1,000 years ago. You know what
yeah,
I mean? Like that
yeah,
ancient Celtic
yeah,
stuff and that ancient, like those things
yeah,
from before
yeah.
modern times. That music is soulful, it's funky, it's natural, it's, you know, it's beautiful, it's, you
But
know,
if you don't know about it, if you're not exposed
right,
to the both the history but also the present of
right.
it,
Yeah.
then you accept that dominant, dominant in
And that's
quotes,
why
right?
culture in and of itself, like all of the things that we
Yeah.
started this conversation with that you are so moored in and so raised and loved and nurtured and nourished, that culture and love and life itself. Like I think about the fact that that
Mhm.
song is called The Life, when I mean death
Mhm.
is just so like it's just like we're gonna death everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just death everything.
Yeah.
You know, but this holistic approach to understanding love and life. And I
Yeah.
mean, that is the great threat. That's the
That is
great
the great
threat.
threat. That is the great threat. And we are part of that great threat as artists. We are part of that great threat
Yeah.
as scholars. We are part of that great threat of people who have had the opportunities and the privileges to move in about in the world and to build community and be able to look around.
Hmm.
For me, it happened to me when I was in Haiti. It happens to me kind of wherever I go out in the world, where I go, what beautiful people and cultures, and who would ever want to destroy these things?
Hmm.
And the powers and the frameworks that have been used to oppress, exploit, and destroy, or attempt to destroy and annihilate us, that the way that we disrupt that and the reason that we are a threat is by building community.
Hmm.
It's by loving each other.
Yes,
It's
that's
by
right. Yes.
identifying the places where we can connect
Hmm.
while valuing and understanding that that doesn't mean that we're exactly the same.
So what happens when you join this caravan thing that we're talking about? You're already getting the albums. You can stream them on streaming services for free, and they pay us a fraction of a penny for those streams. And then that fraction of a penny gets split up and divided between the people who made the music. We're paid least and last, by the way. The people who own the services and the platforms are getting paid the most. But then those fractions of a penny are getting split between the record label, between the artist, between the producer, between the lawyers, between the business managers and the accountants and the managers. That fraction of a penny is being further fractured. And just to be honest, those streaming services, we're not really seeing anything from that. we get a little something, and yeah, it adds up. If you've released, 20 years of music, then it adds up. And if people stream that stuff millions of times, then yeah, it starts to show up in your account. But that's not really a viable thing. So it's cool that you share music, it's cool that you stream it. All of that is great, but that's not really touching us. That's not a lot. That alone is not going to allow us to do the work, to create this music and these podcasts. Now, for podcasts, they don't pay us anything, nothing, nothing at all. On YouTube, if you stream it on YouTube, again, we're getting fractions of a penny again. So that puts us in a situation where we have to, in order to spend the amount of time to be consistent doing this week in and week out, at least 20 hours per episode, there's got to be some type of compensation just to keep us going, just so that we can feed our families and we don't feel like we're stealing from our families by doing these podcast episodes. So if you go to brotherali.com, go to the join section, there's a level in there that's $100. Now that level is called the Trailblazers, the caravan travelers. We're co-travelers on this journey together. The Trailblazers are people who are the, like, if you do the VIP experience at a show where I'm performing for you and we're hanging out and we're talking and we're actually, spending some quality time together before we open the doors and everybody comes in. And so that's a very special level of support and also of engagement. So on that level, I'm interacting with those people on a regular basis. They're interacting with each other. We have a private Slack channel. We've got, monthly Zoom calls. Some of those people have actually come to me and said, "Hey, I actually want to explore becoming Muslim." And so I do that stuff with them one on one. And then those are people that come from the different communities that I'm in. So there are people that have very different experiences, different walks of life, different beliefs, different lifestyles. They're at different stages of life, and those people are actually getting to know each other and doing life together, which is really beautiful and dope. So that's that level. We also have a $5 level where when you get in there, you have access to ask me anything. So people are challenging me on stuff. People are saying, "Why didn't you speak about this?" Or "How is it that you can support this person?" Or "Why did you post that?" Or, "How do you feel about this?" Or "How come you're not talking about this anymore?" Some people are really challenging me. Some people are just curious about stuff, you know. Um, and so I'm able to share in there. So you have access to send me those questions and then also to hear all of those episodes. There are special content in there, special conversations from the podcasts that are in there. Some of the very rare, like hard to find projects that we've done that are not on streaming services. My demo tape from the 1999 and 2000, the demo tape that got me on Rhymesayers, that's up there. There's a mixtape up there that me and BK did in 2007 that was all of my the early kind of features and guest verses and freestyles. Brendan BK made a really dope mixtape out of that. And so that's up there. And if you bought Undisputed Truth the year that it came out, you might have got that for free. Or if you were at the Undisputed Truth tour, the truth, you might have got that one at the merch table. But those are gone. There was only like 1,000 of them and they're gone forever. Rites of Passage demo tape. There was 1,000 of them and they're gone forever. There's a mixtape that I made with Jake One. That's just me spitting into the mic. Also, all of the Brother Minister series that I do, the 1 minute self-produced freestyle series that I do on social media, I collected 12 of those and put them out as Brother Minister Volume 1. But there's over 30 of those that you got to just kind of scroll through social media and try to piece them together. We put them all there for you. There's a guest lecture that I was asked to give in West Africa, where I'm up there talking to a Muslim community in West Africa about how Islam has influenced hip hop music and culture and how that led us to Islam and how that led us back to West Africa. Really dope, intimate kind of moments, things like that. There's live footage of me and my man Evidence performing at my last concert at First Ave. I don't know if I'll do another sold out show at First Avenue in Minneapolis. I don't know. We didn't do it on our last tour. I just don't know where we stand with all of that stuff. So that might be the last one. I don't know. But me and Evidence did this very, very special performance together. So you can see the video for that there. And there's all of these exclusives and rare things. And we're going to constantly continue to feed it We've got a live watch party coming up soon that we'll talk to you more about later. But that's the area where you go to really engage this thing. It's fine if you just want to listen to the podcast for free every week. You're totally welcome. We want to make sure that this is available for everybody, but the people who want to engage, you're the ones that really keep it going. So if you go to brotherali.com, go to join and get in on that $5 level on the caravan. We're trying to get to at least a minimum 1,000 subscribers. And so I'm asking you to really come on in, to come all the way into this thing and to be part of supporting it, to be part of keeping it going, to make sure that we're independent, to make sure we're focusing on the things that we want to prioritize and not the things that social media and these platforms are going to prioritize for us. Much love. Back to the episode. A lot of times, like, we have regret and remorse, and I think it's okay to do that when somebody passes, that, like, now we just start to see how great they really were. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there's something
Yeah.
also very right about that because like Amir Suleiman again says, like our the people that have passed on, they're done with death. We're still dying. And
Mhm.
Allah says in the Quran that
Mhm.
those people, don't think about them as being dead. Don't count them among as dead. They're alive. We're not perceiving them in the same way. So for people that are really like rooted and connected and they're actually like a fountain of the source and the well of
Mhm.
meaning, you know what I'm saying? That like
Mhm.
when their physical body dies, like it's almost like they're more alive than ever.
Yeah.
And
Well, I say they become infinite.
yes,
They are infinite and in everything.
and
They
it's
are in
witnessed.
the
It's
it's
witnessed. And
witnessed.
I think about like Shock G and Zumbi. I know that those are people that were
Mm.
both are very important, you know, they're
Mhm.
important to
Yeah.
all of us, but they're
Yeah.
also people
Yeah.
that you really were with
Yeah.
while they were still
Yeah.
in their shell. When they were
Yeah.
still the bird
Yeah.
in the cage. Now they're just, you know what I mean?
Now they're
But
unlimited.
yeah, but I mean, you started to see all of this footage of Shock started to circulate that, you know, that I think people didn't realize how nuanced and how layered and how deep and how beautifully genius this man really was. Because
Yeah.
when we think about that time in the early 90s, when there's only like really two ways to be a black man in public, like you could be violent,
Yeah.
you could be very, very violent or very, very not.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
for him to put glasses and the nose on and to do a voice,
Yeah.
and you know what I mean? And then
To have
also
all
to
his
slip back
characters.
into, oh man, really. So as somebody who is close to him and one of the many people that lived and loved alongside him and that nourished him and he
Mhm.
nourished you,
Mhm.
I mean, I know it's impossible to put in words, but I just I would love to have documented something from you about Shock.
Yeah. Um, I think you are so right in some of the footage that has come out. Uh, we had years and years without social media, but where things are still documented. But he could make anybody feel like we were the center of the world and mean it, right? In that place. And he was so giving and loving and also all the Virgos in Digital Underground. I'm an Aries, by the way, but all the Virgos in Digital Underground, he was also really passionate, and he would make all these arguments about why I should be a vegan, and he was able to see people like I believe he was able to see our hearts and to see underneath all of us. Really, he was this creative piano player who just wanted to play piano. And he was this magnificent creative mind. And he helped to create something that ended up not being particularly healthy for him.
Hmm.
When he was alive, even when he really made you upset and you couldn't find a point of agreement and you just, philosophized, wrapped it around in circles, he was just this beautiful spirit. And like I'm literally looking at a picture of him at the moment where he just looked so tender and fragile. And he is Humpty Hump, and he is the magnificent Shakji, the one who put the satin on the panties, and he is all those things. But he was a brilliant man. He was a loving, generous human, right? That in many ways I feel that he swooped me up under his wing. Give thanks. People with dirty hands in the business, all these people, they never
Yeah.
could get near to me. He swooped me up when I was so young,
Ah,
right? This is,
yeah.
you think I start rhyming when I'm 16, I'm on my way to becoming a member of Digital Underground by the time I'm 20, right? 19, 20, in some way. But so I feel like he protected me, even though he exposed me to all these crazy things
Mm,
that he protected me. And um, in his in him becoming an ancestor, I I think the part that I want to make sure that I add is that um, look, he died the same way my father did,
mhm,
from drugs in a room. Devastating to me. It felt like it opened up a a place in my heart. I was Shock's female Tupac. He did not want me. He wanted to hold me closer for a bit longer. There, he and I had many conversations where I promised to him that I would not die on him like Pac died on him.
mm,
That I was different. That I had a different journey
mm,
for that.
mm,
And then he died on me. But like he's free, and I take that as I need to be me in this world.
mm,
If I can be as free, as loving, and perhaps healthier
mhm,
than the place he was in, then I can fly. And when I got the call that I was going to be offered a deal, we were on tour, and I sat with him on a tour bus, and we got in this conversation, and I was crying, and he was telling me that I had to go home. I had to go home and make this album, and I'm in tears, and I'm like, but I don't want to leave. Like, I'm with you. Why can't I do them both at the same
leaving a
time?
tour is
Why? Yeah,
heartbreaking.
yeah, I'm like, why can't I stay out here? And also, this is now my family. I'm protected. I'm
Yeah,
safe.
yeah,
I've been claimed in this different sense of like these people would ride or die or live with me.
yeah.
I could be at my worst moment or my best moment. These people are going to
Mhm,
love me. My brothers are going to
that's right.
land, love me,
Yeah.
and stand with me. And he said,
Mm,
"I'm going to tell you, like I told Pac, you have to go and fly." And so I hold that from him in that energy. And I'm really trying not to cry right now, but like I hold I hold that wisdom and that energy um, to fly, and for Zumbi as well, right? Um, these are people who we love, while you said like while they're in their shell, and we get to experience and learn from, and they also belong to the world and to humanity, which can make the
mhm,
healing process a little bit more challenging. But they're now here to forever guide us, and like let it be a reminder. People talk about in some spaces about how can we prepare to be the ancestor we would like to be,
yeah.
and uh and I hold
I
him
quote Amir
as a
Suleiman so
reminder.
much, but Amir Suleiman
Yeah,
says, "You will be
yeah.
someone's ancestor. Act accordingly."
Act accordingly, and I know that from him, and it's like act accordingly. And Gregory Jacobs, aka
Mm.
Shakji, aka Humpty Hump, aka Mr. Piano Man, aka MC Blowfish, aka my mentor, brother,
Mhm,
leader, my heart. Yeah, he's like act accordingly, right? If
mhm,
there was anything that bound you, unbind, act accordingly, and move. And I had been hoping to play the new album for him because it has all this piano all over it, and I had
mm,
been hoping to
mm,
tell him that I finally stopped smoking cigarettes, and like I'm here, I'm in this great place as a woman, and there were all these things, and then and then he transitioned and became an ancestor. And when the album came out, I played it outside, like, I know you can hear me.
Mm.
So that's a long thing about Shaq, but like, man, he's I love him dearly, forever and a day. And I would not be the healed woman who I am if it was not in part to him. I would not be the artist who you guys hear if it was not
Mhm.
in part to him. And I'm not sure that I would have freed myself as much as I had before the industry ever kind of got their hands on me as an artist, but as a woman and as a human. If it were not for him.
I was only around Shock a few times.
Yeah.
Um, one of the times though was Merce got married
Mhm.
in Arizona.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I went to the wedding, and actually Brendan BK, the producer of the podcast, was my first DJ, and so we
Oh,
went to the
nice.
wedding together, and we were sat at the table with Shock, and it was really deep because I've seen Shock in different settings,
Yeah.
and there was something that he did energetically there, where he was like, "This is not my day."
Yeah.
Like his energy could be so big and could be so all
Exactly.
encompassing, but also
Yeah.
he was able to, and he actually toured with Merce
Yep.
and did the same thing where
Yeah.
like Shakti is a big major global celebrity,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? And us, like he was at the, and he was so happy to like, he had a million questions for me and Aesop Rock and like all these people are like, "Dad, how do you even know
Yeah.
who we are? Like you're not even supposed to know who I am." And he's
He
just like,
knew
when
who
you
everybody
were
was.
making this song, why did you sample this? And then like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and he knew all the records we had sampled, and he was like so happy
Yeah.
to make it about other people. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Mhm.
So, and I don't know if I've been around Money B before, but I was just like, when I see things that he'll post about your work,
Yeah.
there's something
Yeah.
about the way he says your name that I'm like, man, he really loves her. And
Yeah.
when I was thinking about the fact that like you were in Digital Underground a few years after Sex Packets and stuff, but with
Mhm.
all that
Mhm.
early energy around freaks of the industry, and it seems to me as though something about that name was communicating to people like, yes, this is an attractive young lady that's part of our crew, but make no mistake, this is an artist that we honor and respect as an artist like
Yeah.
us. Like this is a
Yeah.
crew
Yeah.
member. This is not a cute chick that's
Yeah.
around
Well,
us.
there was a shift. There was
Mm,
a intentional shift when I was being brought in, and when I went out on tour, it was there were no female singers, there were no dancers, there was no kind
mm.
of, you know,
The circus,
sexual
the
the
sex
women.
circus.
I mean, we definitely, threw out condoms and popcorn, and I definitely sing backgrounds on tour to freaks of the industry and
Uh,
all of those pieces, right? I support my brothers in what they do.
yes, yeah.
But it was an intentional shift. And I joke that he took me on tour to take care of everybody else. And people will tell you I go on tour with this bag of vitamins and healthcare. And if you're sick, I'll come and take care of you, and I'll go to the health food store for you. And they kept eating my health food on the bus. And but Shock was he was making a different uh he was making a different presentation,
Mhm.
and I was what he thought that should look like. And it definitely is so interesting to hear you say it that way, because it was definitely like, this is our crew,
Mhm.
right? Like, don't. And that was part of even the way the set was designed. That I'm singing ad libs on some stuff that is definitely risque, and I'm running back and forth, and I'm this person. Oh, Money B, right? In these backgrounds, and then I take Pac's place on the same song. But
Yes.
people in the audience in the crowd, they don't know like that I spit like this until I actually take that place.
There's footage
There's
of
an
that.
Yeah, and there's also another place where he would do this whole conversation about how, like, there's all these sperm and just one makes it to the egg, so you already won when you make it in this life and you're born and you're here. And then he would kind of transition to and we won when we got Mystic, when we got the Do You Got It.
Oh
And I
man.
would come on and he wanted to use Miss Lauren Hill's Lost Ones, right? And that's why I would come in with it's the D You Got It. How sweet the sound, right? Um, and the crowd would go, oh, and they would be so loud. But part of what I learned in that is play your position on the stage. And what
Mm.
looks crazy and unorganized to you, at least with Digital Underground, is highly structured. There is a stage plot, there is a show, there are times when you are on stage, there are times when you are not allowed to be on stage. You will be docked if you are on stage on the wrong place. You are disrupting what this is supposed to look like and how professional this is supposed to be. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about being part of a crew. I'm happy to stand back and support you to shine. I don't have to rhyme over you. I don't have to walk in front of you. And actually, the training of digital is you don't walk in front of somebody else when it's their verse. You don't yell over other people who are the primary representative on the stage at that time. That's not your role. Your role as part of this crew, if I need you to breathe on a track, you breathe on it. If I need you to step front and center stage and sing, please step center stage and sing. Understand that you are part of a unit. You are part of a collective. If you are the best person for the tour, you're on it. If you're a best person for that song, you're on it.
Mm.
And and know that you are loved whether you are on the stage at that moment or you're not, or you're on the song or you're not. And that's part of the training that comes. But yeah, I used to love those. I used to love those moments. Yeah,
It's especially powerful when the leader of the crew is modeling it as well. Like when they're happy to step
absolutely.
back and when they're happy to
Absolutely.
be the supporting role. Yeah.
But what people don't often know is like Shock was doing like this. I think it was a quartet, like jazz piano playing and stuff with Pee Wee and what have you. Like he wanted to go on a tour and just play the keys. He didn't want to be Humpty. He didn't. He wanted to. He loved to play piano. He loved to play those keys. Going back to the Cuts for Luck album,
Mhm.
it's not that I couldn't have had him produce a song on that album. Uh, I wanted him to do what made him happy.
Mm.
And I brought all of them into the studio when the album was kind of done and asked him to play the keys. He's the person playing the keys on the intro. He's the person playing the keys on the lead up to the life before it begins. And
Ah.
he's playing the keys. The speaking that you hear that is now after Fatherless Child, that actually literally came from a phone message. That wasn't done in the studio. That's a message that he left for me. So yeah. And becoming part of a crew as somebody who was just like, out there doing my own thing.
Mhm.
Um, I think it makes you stand a little taller and you're like, yeah, it's not just me, it's my people. And what? Right? And everybody's fit, right? And I dare you to put your hands on me.
Mhm.
You will find yourself in an unhappy position. But it's like the biggest part of it, the biggest part of it was love and learning about family and learning how to carry
But that's
oneself as
love
a
too.
professional. It is. It is.
Yeah, sometimes love comes with a bum rush when need be.
Well, when it's me and 11 brothers on the road and in that particular place, and I say this not because I think it's where we should be. I think it speaks to the way that I used to respond to people as somebody who had been raped. That I was not. Don't touch me. I don't know you as a man. Like don't
Right.
push up on me. Don't. So would
Yeah.
be quick to slap a dude. But what you learn through having family is that if I do that, then they all get involved. So you have to learn to be responsible for your brothers. You have to learn to be responsible for your family. It's one of the things I learned at a young age, not because I consider myself a leader or want to be a leader. I'll say it like this: when people will die for you,
Mhm.
You are responsible for upholding the ways that they can live with you. Just because people will go and die for you and they will ride
Mhm.
for you does
Mhm.
not mean that that's what you send them to do. You actually need to recognize and say, I love you, so thus I will not send you out there to be in danger. And part
Mhm.
of that I learned through digital. I needed to not put myself in situations where I would put my brothers in harm's way. And so that taught me a different way to articulate, if you do not get away from me, you are going to be in trouble. And not to physically hit people.
So in a lot of ways, Cuts for Luck feels like a mission statement, and Black Love Trilogy feels like an announcement of arrival. Like
Yeah.
when I hear you say that
Mm.
when you made Cuts for Love, you identify that young lady that made that as a broken black girl.
Mm-hmm.
And the
Mm-hmm.
person who made Black Love Trilogy is a healed black woman. That's really powerful.
Yeah, no, the new album is Dreaming in Cursive, The Girl Who
Okay.
Loves Sparklers, right? And this
Okay.
may help with the connection. A Black Love Trilogy is the three singles that are being used to do the music videos, and the short film is the Black Love Trilogy, and it's been so hard
Got
to
it.
figure out how to kind of like not confuse people around it. But Dreaming in Cursive, The Girl Who Loves Sparklers is is when you listen to the intro to that, you listen to the
Mhm.
outro of that album, hopefully, although people can interpret things differently, what people get is that part of what that is symbolizing is me through my healing process being closer to that girl, that little girl who believed in magic
Mhm.
and love and community before there was ever trauma. And I am
Mhm.
closer to that little girl than I have ever been since I was that little girl. And
Mm.
I still love sparklers. And the dreaming and cursive part is about how much love and community and justice and my journey is all interconnected, right? My dreams are all interconnected. And it's also in some way informed by um, I was doing a project. I was making a piece of art again with kindergartners. I'm writing in cursive. They can't read it. They start modeling the art and they start writing their own things in their own cursive. They asked me what the cursive says, and I said it says the world needs more love. And one of the girls, her mom walks in, and the girl runs up to her mother and says, "The world needs more love." Right? And the teacher looks at me like, what do you do with my child over here, right? In the best way, with a smile. But it's also that it's that cursive, it's that those interconnections between that untraumatized girl and that healed woman. I've never made an album before that wasn't connected to processing trauma.
Right.
There's a song on there that's called "Still Love" that um, we're dropping the video for very soon, um, and people could listen to that and feel like it's a little bit heavier. But really, that song is about is about recognizing that someone you're in love with, that's not like the the place for you to be in a romantic sense. The love exists, right? But your destiny is in love without labels, love without expectations, and love. We're not supposed to date everybody. We're not supposed
Mhm.
to be in a relationship or marry everybody that we think that we have a connection with. I think there's lessons there, but even in that song, I'm really asking, how can you know, where did the love go? How can I love you better? The question is in reference to the love that we shared before things got really difficult, right? But I don't talk about that because I believe that people should. I don't now. I've talked about it, but I don't really talk about it because I believe people should be able to process songs how they want to process them. But that song is a piece of closure after an incredibly long period of time of navigating some really hard places with this
Mhm.
man who we can't be together, but we really love each other. Um, when you listen to the song, it's not bagpipes, but it literally sounded like bagpipes. It's the burial of a closure. And for me, it's the closure of a piece of myself as a woman who is looking into places that may not be the healthiest for me to thrive. That I need to be in control um, of what I do with my body and my energy and my love. And as Shot called me, the angel something savior. My job is not to save everybody, and I'd rather just love everybody.
Mm.
So, anyways, that difference between the albums, like that you had not made that connection, is beautiful to me
Mm.
because I keep trying to encourage people. I'm like, if you go back and you start with the Cuts for Luck and Scars for Freedom album, and you journey from that album through the beautiful Resistance album, which is primarily produced by Eli from Living Legends, and then you
Mm.
get to the Dreaming in Cursive album, you I'm vulnerable through all of them. I think you can kind of see into at least part of my life and my journey of healing and my womanhood journey. Yeah, that you can you that journey is there. If you just listen to Dreaming in Cursive and you think that's how I've always been and that's where I showed up, then oh, I am so sorry. Please let me direct you back to Cuts for Luck and Scars for Freedom so you can understand. Sometimes when I walk into a prison, whether it's for adults or whether it's for children, or when I walk into a classroom, walk into a community space to facilitate, I'm like, a lot of us show up in these spaces and we seem like we have everything together, right? And we've always been this way.
Mm-hmm.
And we've always been here. And my thing is always like, but let me tell you how I got here.
Mm-hmm.
And let me tell you why I continue to love. And let me tell you why I believe that this is possible and that trauma can disrupt our lives, but we can reclaim ourselves through using
That's
our
right.
support systems, that we can be non traditional students and scholars, that there are actually multiple lifetimes within this one lifetime that we have.
Yes.
I can share this because I've done it. I know what it is to be that broken girl, and we do not get to being healed women or men or however we want to identify, just as healed humans. It's messy. It takes work to get there. So I never want people to think that I've always been this person, but I always have been loving,
Mm-hmm.
and I always have believed in community and justice.
Seeing this unfold in someone's artistic journey, because like I
Yeah.
went back and listened, obviously, to
Yeah. Yeah.
to your first record after having heard it so many times when it dropped. But I mean, the seeds are there, like the seeds for all of the things that you're talking about, and it's almost like you know it in on some sort of like molecular level because you really are calling on it, like you really are conjuring it and
Yeah.
manifesting and praying for it, and
Yeah.
you're speaking about it in a way that like these things will unfold. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a
There was
really
something that I
beautiful thing to
knew.
witness.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
there was something that I knew regardless of what I had been through,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I remember telling my mom, I was like, "Yeah, I'm a rapper," and I was like, and she's like, "Well, that's a really hard pathway," and I was like, "I'm different though."
Go ahead.
And in
Go
her
ahead.
most
Go ahead.
loving
I'm doing.
motherly
Go ahead.
way, she was like, in her most loving motherly way, she was like, but everybody thinks they're different now. And I was like, though, and I said, no, you don't. You don't get it though. I'm different. And I couldn't have known what all of the things were, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I say it in this really humble way, but it's also like, look, I was born into this room full of people after my mother being in labor for 48 hours. There was music played while she was in labor. She got up and made pancakes for people while she was in labor. Once I was finally born, I was passed around the room so I would feel comfortable with people, and my father played music. Is there any question as to why I am who I am.
Yeah.
This is the way I entered this lifetime. But there was something that I knew.
Yeah.
Don't you feel like you just knew things? Like you are who you are supposed to be. You are doing what you are supposed to do, including with this podcast and through these conversations and what you're sharing. This is this is like you and I ending up here is
Yeah.
exactly where we are supposed to be
Yes.
right at this moment on this day in this lifetime. We are right on time. And I didn't know I would end up here with you, but here
That's
we
got
are.
to be the final. That's got to be the final word. There's no better man. Well,
Ah,
I'm so deeply honored and grateful for your time and for your witness and your wisdom and just for sharing so freely with yourself. You know, not that that we've come to know you for being that way, but I'm still grateful every time that you do it. And yeah, just so much love, so much admiration, so much gratitude. Like I,
thank you. Like really the love and creating and facilitating a space where we can talk about our journeys, where we can talk about God, where we can talk about communities, where we can talk about how we are the beginning and the infinity
mhm,
of of this planet and of our cultures, and to talk about hip hop and the power of connection. It's such a special thing. So it's an honor to be here, and I keep listening to you, talking to all of my loved ones and my friends and people like Immortal and you know people who have supported me tremendously, like Slug, and just like yeah, I'm honored to be here in your collection of community.
yeah. Love you, love you. Talk soon.
Love you, love you.
Bye bye.
Peace.
So grateful to my dear friend, my sister, one of my key inspirations, Mystic, just for being so generous with her time and her wisdom and herself and her experience. She really shared a lot here, and I'm so grateful for it. I'm just grateful for the connection, the bond. As always, that's what it's about. Make sure that you follow Mystic on her social media platforms and check out the new album, Dreaming in Cursive, The Girl Who Loves Sparklers. She also has done this, film series around key parts of this project uh, called a Black Love Trilogy. Really incredible stuff. So go and check her out and follow her and support her, especially if you're in the Bay Area. You may just get to see her pop up at a show, performances, all of that. Her social media is really beautiful and really inspirational and healing. So much props and so grateful to our sister Mystic, our teacher, really, Mystic, for just being here with us and being part of this Journey on the Travelers podcast. We're brought to you as always by the Zakat Foundation, zakat.org is where you go to be part of the work that they're doing all over the world to support orphans, to feed people, to clothe people, to help people be safe, to house people whose homes were destroyed in wars and earthquakes and hurricanes and all over the world. It's a Muslim led organization, but they don't only help Muslims and they don't proselytize. Like they're happy to just support human beings. So go to Zakat US on social media, follow all the work that they're doing, but go to zakat.org, zakat.org, and put something down on what they're doing because it's extremely important work. And it's an organization that I know and love and I trust them. And I'm telling you, this is an organization you can trust. We also have this relationship, this partnership with BetterHelp. I'm able to access therapy through BetterHelp, which is an online platform and network of trained, licensed therapists, mental health workers, social workers that work in all different areas of mental health. There's a lot of different types of therapy, and they've got people that specialize in all of these approaches. And so go to betterhelp.com/travelers and that'll start you on the process. You're going to get a discount because we sent you there, and we're also going to get a commission that supports the work that we do here on the podcast and at Travelers Media. So you'll go there, you'll fill out a questionnaire. that's just going to give them information on what is it that's bringing you to therapy, and it really gets you walking on this journey to mental health and to therapy and to wellness. So very grateful to be partnered with them. We've been talking about it all the way through, and we're going to keep on talking about it because we're really trying to build this movement, this community, what we call the caravan, and that's at brotherali.com. Go to the join section and get down with that. Also, all of our merch is there. You can get dope t-shirts for the podcast. You know what I'm saying? You can get all of the Brother Minister cassette series. You can get the all of the vinyl is up there. The 20-year anniversary of Shadows on the Sun just happened, and so you can get Shadows on the Sun vinyl. The albums are up there. All of that good stuff. Our shows, all of it is there. So go to brotherali.com, hang out, and join the caravan. Much love to Amna Mirza, to Mansour Panawala, to all the people that have helped us with this podcast. Shout to Medina Hip Hop, Mark from Medina Hip Hop, who created the logo for this podcast. Shout to Ant, who did the music. All of the people that help out. Travelers Podcast is produced by Brendan Kelly, aka BK1, who's going to be on very soon. It's a product of Travelers Media. We love you all. We'll talk to you next week, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.